we're going to sync those up. So if you see me looking over here, it's just so that our volumes are kind of the same. But that's about it. So other than that, what I usually tell people is when we first start talking, usually they try to start, like I ask childhood questions first, and then usually it's, oh yeah, in my childhood. And then in the same sentence, they're like, oh, and now I'm here. But it's I'd like to take our time, because my main thing is everybody makes decisions for a reason. Most people make decisions off of what they know. And if we're kind of just, hey, this is what Arnold looks like now, and this is what Arnold does, then people miss out on the last 15, 20 years of however he got there. So if we take our time, if we tell some stories at the younger times, then I'm A-okay with that.
Oh, I think that's good, because I think that's exactly how what I do. I can get stuck on stories forever.
Wonderful. All right, I'm in. All right, wonderful. So there'll be a awkward pause so I can see the silence, and then we'll get started.
No worries.
All right, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So we'll get started where everybody else does. As far as childhood, as early memories as you can to about middle school, what were you into as a kid?
Oof. I was always into sports. Like, I
Okay.
was 3 years old and I told my parents I was going to the Olympics. I think it was like the Atlanta Olympics.
Wow.
And we had a tricycle, and I would do loops around the house over and over and over while
Okay.
watching. Yeah, oddly enough, I did not become a cyclist at all. So, but I
You knew
still
you were
have.
going.
Yeah, I still have that tricycle, and we still have the couch. It was a couch my dad built. It's at our family like log cabin now, and it
Wow.
has like a little mark of where I would cut the corner, and so the tricycle would like hit the corner, and like make like a mark in
You
there.
knew you
So
had to get that inside line.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I was always extremely competitive. My dad, my mom is from Venezuela and my dad is from Canada. My
Okay.
mom is like the least competitive person ever, and my dad is extremely competitive. And
Yeah.
him and I are more similar. I have a younger brother, he's 3 years younger, and he's more similar to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad is an entrepreneur as well, and so kind of we related on that, also but butted heads on that. But he was
Yeah.
always pushing me since day one. He'll show me like videos now of like my childhood and be like, remember we were training on the bed, you were doing leg press against my arm. I'm like, what, like as a baby? And he's like, yeah, and then you were trying to do a sit-up, and I was like, okay, I don't know. But he likes to take credit that he built my agility and all these things from a young
Hey,
age.
there you go. You got it. Got to start them young.
Yeah, unknowingly, while I wasn't paying attention, I was doing all
Yeah.
this training. But yeah, so yeah, always was into sports and the outdoors. We lived in Vancouver, and
Okay.
then we ended up moving to. We were supposed to move actually to the Ottawa area when I was, I think, around 6. And my dad had an invention that he actually sold the licensing to a company in the States. So
Very
like
nice.
last minute, like we looked at houses in Ottawa, houses just to rent and everything. And then we ended up, he got this contract. We had to go to the States. We lived with my grandparents for like a month
Okay.
in between that, and then we moved to New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a 2 year hiatus from sports, because like I learned how to ski and everything out west. But
Yeah.
when I was in New Jersey, it was foreign territory. Like my mom couldn't work because we're in this foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
My dad could, and so like my dad and I would go and play tennis. I played soccer. There wasn't any hockey,
Mm-hmm.
but hockey was definitely it's a big Canadian sport.
Yeah.
And so when
So
we
so for the Americans listening, they know very much what's inside the border, but Vancouver is in Canada. So
yes.
I just want to let people know that's where it is. So we're at New Jersey. What age is this, kind of still fairly young, or?
Yeah, like 6,
Okay.
7, kind of like I guess kindergarten, grade 1.
Yeah.
And yeah, for reference, Vancouver is where all the mountains are.
Yep.
Ottawa, not where the mountains are, and that'll come full circle as I'm a
Yeah.
snowboarder. But and then yeah, New Jersey, yeah, just it was close to New York City. We went a couple times actually to New York City, and but really I don't remember doing much. I just remember going to school. Like
Mm-hmm.
really, it was kind of like a 2 year hiatus of things. And
Yeah.
yeah, then eventually we did move back to Ottawa after those 2 years. And that's when I got like super into hockey. We got back as a family into skiing
Mm-hmm.
and doing all these outdoor activities.
So
Um,
what does skiing as a family look like? Is that downhill? Is it cross country? And then I don't. What's the difference?
Yeah, we actually we did both. Like growing up, we did downhill because we were in Vancouver, and I learned at like the local mountains around there.
Hmm.
And then when we came, actually, I got into skateboarding when I was in New Jersey, so at least there was something that
Okay.
progressed. Yeah, because that led to me switching to snowboarding eventually. But
Yeah.
yeah, like then when we came back, like my grandparents, they have this. They had the same home since they were, I think, before my dad was born,
Wow.
and it's like the small bungalow home in a like a small town, very small, but they back onto like this whole area. They have 8 acres, and they back onto like cross country ski trails, and
Very
they used to be
nice.
the ones who would maintain them. So
Yeah.
yeah, we used to do that a lot, like only when we'd visit them. They had like the neighbors would have like 20 pairs of skis, and we would just grab, because they had older
That's
kids, like
nice.
yeah, they had like 4 older kids, so we can grab whatever skis we want,
Yeah.
and we would put them on and do that with them, but we weren't so into it. But downhill skiing was like, I remember I would always want to go to the mountain and do that, but we didn't even own skis. Like we would rent.
Hmm.
Yeah, like back then, even like we rented a townhome, my family. It sounds cool to say like my dad had an invention and we went to the States,
Yeah.
but yeah, there was a lot of things that happened with that business deal that didn't work out the
Hmm.
way he planned. And so yeah, it's not like we were like going to Aspen or something. We were
Right.
going to the local ski hills, and renting, whenever we could when we weren't playing hockey, because hockey was like, oof. In Canada, you play hockey, it's like every day almost. So
Yeah. So
it's hard.
was that through the school that you were playing hockey, through rec, or just the local rink, or how did that take place?
Yeah, I played competitive hockey through like our city's team, I guess you could
Hmm.
say, and like travel hockey. Like sometimes we would go and play teams in the States, and all around. Like I played basically the highest level competitive. That was like my goal then. It was like I want to make the women's national team
Okay.
in Canada and play hockey. So like that was my thing.
Hmm.
But then I discovered one day I was renting skis with my family and discovered snowboarding. One of my brother's like hockey friends, older brother, was an instructor, and I was like, oh, like kids in my class say this is cool, and I'm into skateboarding.
Yeah.
So I switched and just never turned back. And to be honest,
Hmm.
I was horrible at the start because, like going back to how my dad was training me, I was very much a natural athlete at almost every sport. On my
Hmm.
school, like elementary school teams, I played on every single sport, like 8 sport teams a year.
Wow.
Um, any sport that there was, basketball, soccer, cross country running,
Hmm.
sprinting, like anything I could do, I was that was everything. So like I
Yeah.
always knew I wanted to be an athlete.
It's all
Hockey
those
was
leg
also
presses that you did.
I think exactly. He likes to take credit for that. But yeah, then I found the snowboarding, and it was like that one sport that challenged me. It was so
Hmm.
hard. I was horrible. I thought I would be good. And so I think that was why I stuck to it, because it just frustrated me that I wasn't good at this, which
Yeah.
is shocking because at school, things come easy. You do them.
Hmm.
Classes that you don't like, you ignore, but somehow like I just really fell in love with the process of like trying to
Yeah.
improve at this, and stuck with it.
So you say that the difficulty, was it, so when I was snowboarding, my difficulty was just holding onto the rope and getting to the top of the hill. Um, so the improvement would have been vast, but we did not make it past that day. So where did you see in improvement, and were you looking at someone like, I want to be like them, or you're just like, hey, I need to get better at just at this? Like what was your kind of mindset there?
Yeah, I think in the early days, like there wasn't really any. Like I remember I used to watch like skateboard videos, and I had this Tony Hawk video, and at the end of the video, it would show like trick tips. So I would
Okay.
watch the whole video, get motivated, then watch the trick tips, and go outside and try to practice. I'm like, okay, I need to
Hmm.
learn how to ollie, I need to learn, the basic tricks. And so definitely in skateboarding, I was like, I would cut out magazine pictures of skateboarders. I thought it was so cool. In snowboarding, like for example, my how bad I was like literally I thought I would go down the hill and be pro, and I just caught my edge and like tumbled all the way down.
Yeah.
And then my family from then on out would ditch me because they wanted to ski, and they would say, okay, you want to snowboard, like teach yourself and enjoy,
Yeah.
and if you can keep up with us, like we'll see you around, but
Hmm.
it's basically like we'll meet you at the end of the day. And so yeah, so I really was like motivated to try to kind of prove it to myself that I could do this and then like keep up with them. I think
Yeah.
also like some of the guys in my class, for example, I played boys baseball because the guys in my class said they were playing baseball, and I said, oh, okay, then I'm going to register. And so I was like the only girl on the team. for that. And so
Yeah.
seeing them that they snowboarded, and I said I started and I got teasing about it. So I was like, okay, then I want to be good and better than them.
Hmm.
And that was the weird part, is one day I was at the hill just by myself with my family, and I saw two guys from my school, and they said, oh, like, come up with us. I'm like, oh, okay, like I can't even turn, but sure. And I remember like getting to the top, and I saw them, they started turning. So I just followed like what they did. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm linking turns. Like I
Yeah.
was just like so motivated to not fall behind them and like try to keep up. That all of
Yeah.
a sudden I was linking these turns. And I think that's kind of like where it clicked. But at that point I didn't have like, I didn't know anyone in snowboarding. I didn't,
Hmm.
we're not in a snowboard. Like there's no big mountains. These are like hills that take 20
Yeah.
seconds to go down, So I wouldn't say that there was anything specifically motivating me then, but then once it started clicking, I started researching. And I remember we had a class project. I think it was grade 5 or 6 or something. Maybe it must be actually like grade 6 or actually, yeah, maybe grade 6 or 8. I'm not sure,
Hmm.
something around that, because I didn't
We
start
won't
snowboarding.
fact check you.
Yeah, I didn't start snowboarding until I was like 12 or 13, which is actually pretty late for
Yeah.
like a lot of snowboarders now. You see snowboarders who are like started at 2.
Hmm.
And a lot of people I competed against also were in that situation. But I was sitting in class and we had to write, like we had to partner up with some people, and our teacher got us to write like, what do we want to do when we grow up, basically like our dreams. And then the other person had to write about it. And I remember telling this guy, I was like, I want to be a pro snowboarder. He's like, what? And I was like, I don't know where it came from, but I was like daydreaming in class,
Yeah.
which happened very often. I was a good student. I actually was gifted, and they wanted me to skip a grade and I didn't. And that's what happened. I got very bored. And so
Wow.
I would daydream in class. I would finish my work and just sit there, and then I would become a nuisance to the
So
class.
how do they approach you when they say they want you to skip a grade? Or they're like, is that something that just happened over the years, or how does one even?
So in the US, they do a lot of standardized tests.
Yes,
And when I was
this
in
is
New
true.
Jersey, I did some test. I don't know. I must have been like grade 1 or something, or kindergarten,
Mhm.
who knows. And when I came back to Ottawa, they sent the results, I guess, to the school. And one day I got like called out from the school, and they said, hey, like we want you to write this other like test. And then, yeah, they told my parents that I was gifted and I could switch to a gifted school. There was one in the city, but I was an athlete. So I was like, oh, I don't want to go to this school of all just smart people. I want to be like, just normal and with
Yeah.
the athletes and stuff. And but they predicted, they were like, well, she gets her work done fast, and then she's gonna, like just zone out because she doesn't have this work, because like they just give you extra work, they won't give you harder work. And so I would issue, they're like, she's probably just going to zone out or like disrupt the class, which is exactly, I just like disrupt the class is exactly what I would do because I was bored.
Yeah.
And that's really exactly what happened with my school, because I never really had to study all throughout school. And that's exactly what happened once I got to like high school and stuff. It was literally just me zoning out, and luckily I had sports, which taught me hard work and drive and all
Yeah.
those things, because I think it's important to learn those things and be challenged for sure.
For sure. So what type of how much time were you putting into snowboarding when you got into high school? Like, was it every day, a couple days a week? What did that look like?
Yeah, so basically I had to make the decision between hockey and snowboarding.
Okay.
And that like broke my my dad's heart, I think, because, I had a path in hockey, right? You can get a scholarship. There's this national team. Snowboarding at the time, like I did slopestyle snowboarding, so all the jumps and the rails, that only got into the Olympics in 2014. So
Okay.
back then there was no Olympics. There was just X Games, just punk kids,
Yeah.
and like that, my parents were like, what? No, you're not going to be a snowboarder. And I wasn't even good. Like I was not good at all. And I said, no, like I want to do this. And because you can't go snowboarding very often when you're playing hockey, like I mentioned, especially when I was playing at the highest level, like there's no
Right.
weekends off. And so, getting to snowboard only like a handful of times a year, like seriously, like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
You're not going to progress, right? So after like 2 years of that, I like saved up on my board, and I decided, well, for 1 year I played lower level hockey. But
Mhm.
again, it wasn't fun. There was like 2 games that I scored 10 goals in 2 games. Like it's the same, like you want to be challenged, like I don't want to sound like cocky at all, because I was just playing below my level, right? Like you have a
Right.
competitive player who played AA and you go to B or C, competitive still. And and for me, seeing my teammates, they're just talking about like stuff. They're not into the game. After the game, we lose and they don't care. And I'm like, this is not the mindset that I enjoy. I want to be pushed by my teammates. I want to be competitive. Like we all have this goal. And so then I made the decision after that 1 year of like playing lower that it wasn't fun for me to play at that level. And then so I ended up playing on my high school team, which was really cool because we had people of all levels. Like we had some people on our team who went on to play at Princeton, but then we had people who we actually had to get more players because we didn't have enough players on our team. And we bought, like, a girl had all new equipment. She had never played before, so we had a huge level of players on our team. So I was able to do that. And so in high school, I played hockey. Ran cross country and did like a few different things. I think I played volleyball too, but anything that wasn't in the winter, basically, because the hockey actually was just in the fall. And then snowboarded as much as I could, and I got a job at the local ski hill being an instructor.
That's a good move.
So that was the key, because then my parents were motivated to drive me. And yeah, so then they would drive me like on the nights so I could teach. I think like 1 or 2 weeknights I would instruct at the ski hill, and then basically like every weekend, and then all of the winter break and the March break and everything I was working and instructing. And if I between lessons I would go into the park and practice.
So as far as a path, like obviously with hockey you go up the levels, you go on the national team. What does the path look like for snowboarding? You just know that you want to do it, or was there kind of anybody to follow?
Yeah, so back then it was literally like, I open the snowboard magazines, and again, just like the skateboard magazines, cut out pictures. I was like, oh, these people are pro. But yeah, there wasn't, which was really surprising to my parents because I had this whole Olympic goal, right? So they were like, well, what's the path? And I just started entering local competitions and things like that. And I would say, well, there's bigger competitions and they pay you money when you win. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, and you can get sponsors and they give you free stuff and then they can pay you. And they were like,
free stuff, I'm in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're like, okay, like, I don't know. And so I was trying to convince them, like, all these events that you can go to, it's not the Olympics, but there's all these different events, local level, national level, international level. But again, not super organized. It's snowboarding. And so I was trying to convince them on this. And then so you have the sponsorships, you can get like magazine coverage, you can make movies, there's filming, that's a big part. So either backcountry riders make like backcountry movies, or
very cool,
or people make street rail movies. That's something I actually got into when I was like 17. You go to this like downtown, find like crazy handrails basically on stair sets, and build like ramps and jumps onto the rails and try to like grind them.
Very cool.
That's that was something I was into. So there was all these different like paths, but basically it really came down to you need sponsors, because even if you go to these events, say they pay you, I don't know, if you win like a really large event, maybe you get 20 grand or something, but if you have a sponsor, they'll match that. So that's a common like deal. So like they'll match it.
That's very nice.
Yeah, I did not win any events that were 20 grand, to be fair. But I did win a few, and yeah, so just coming up, I was just begging them to like take me to the bigger mountains and to the bigger competitions and things like that. I would reach out to companies. My first sponsor was like a local skateboard shop. And so that's like a pretty common first sponsor, because like they have all the connections with all the different brands that they sell. So that's really common in the skateboard and snowboard industry, is that to be your first sponsor, because they're kind of like a liaison to all the local events, especially local events that are invite only. They can get you in and all those things. So yeah, that was kind of my path. Really, it was just like having fun at that point, and trying to progress, seeing where it took me. And then I started entering these competitions. I think my last year of high school, I got really serious about it. We met my whole family with our guidance counselor at the school, and I said, hey, like, I'm really serious about this sport. Again, no path. So I'm really lucky that he actually was like, he had seen me develop as an athlete in the school. And so he's like, yeah, I think, he had no idea if I was good at snowboarding, but I was lucky that he didn't like tell my parents, no, like, this is stupid. He kind of like listened and was like, yeah, sure. So they gave me a path where I could graduate high school early. So I took extra courses in the summer while I was working a summer job. I'd be like, bring my laptop on my lunch breaks. And I would think I was taking like English class or something. I had to do a couple years of early morning band practices. That I got.
Okay, what instrument did you play?
The drums.
Very nice.
Yes. And you got an extra credit for that. Anyways, I had this whole plan. And so I actually ended up finishing all my credits a semester early. So my whole last semester, I didn't have to go to school, which, I mean, I kind of miss that opportunity because a lot of my friends, you know, the last semester of high school, they're doing a
Yeah.
lot of things, but I was kind of on my own. And so basically, I had this whole plan of like, I'm going to go here and do this. But I realized, oh, how am I going to afford to go here and do this? So I
Mhm.
actually got a job making breakfast sandwiches from like 5 a.m. till noon every weekday.
Wow.
But then I would take time off. That was what was lucky. I would always
Mhm.
negotiate with any job I had, like, hey, I have a competition or do this. And so I went to out west for a competition. I actually ended up breaking my tailbone, came back and pushed through. Like I was like, no, this can't end my season. Went to this big competition that I wanted to go to. Essentially, the year before, I came dead last in this competition. I cried about it. I was so
Mhm.
upset, and I said, next year I'm going to win. And so I came back, and I ended up winning this competition. And by winning that, I ended up getting a paid trip. I won money, I won a ton of gear, and a paid trip by like Billabong and Monster Energy to go out to California and do the finals of the competition.
That's super
So
cool. But can we back up a hair?
yeah.
You broke your tailbone?
Yes, yes. It's not a good one to break. There's nothing you can do. That's the thing. That's why I kept going. Is there's no cast you can put. It's just like don't move for a few months.
So, was it on a rail? Was it on a?
No, so I was out back in Vancouver. Funny thing is like I was on the same run that I learned how to ski on when I was a kid. They actually
Okay.
turned that run into the train park. And I was in the practice of the competition. This is like my first competition flying by myself and going out. Luckily, I have a ton of family out west, so
Hmm.
staying with them and they picked me up and all these things, but they dropped me off for the day for my practice training day. I knew no one there really.
Yeah.
And I went off the jump and just like went a little too fast and kind of slipped out, and so basically, like my snowboard's out in front of me and I landed straight on my butt and
Not
knew
ideal.
something was wrong. Yeah, like I couldn't even lean over to take off my bindings. The flight home was horrible. I did end up competing like the next day. I had to get someone to put in my bindings and I had to take a lot of painkillers.
Wow.
But I was pretty determined because I'd went like gone all the way out there and I just didn't want to, the trip to be a waste. I invested a lot of money. And so yeah, did that, flew home, got x-rays, and then just continued riding.
So what exactly does the doctor tell you? He says, oh, you have a couple months and then you can get back to rehab, or what's their suggestion?
There's nothing they can do about a broken tailbone, literally. Like I think if it's like really, really, really messed up, maybe they can do some sort of surgery. But like basically, like the coccyx is such a small bone, and it gets like fractured in any way. Like you can't really immobilize it. You can't like unless
Mhm.
you're just laying in bed for months. But even that's like painful, not going to do any help.
Yeah.
And so really, they said like unless you really like land hard on it again, you're not really going to do anything worse. Like it's just pain. It's not like you're gonna really like mess yourself up for life.
Yeah.
It's already kind of just this is how it is. And so yeah, so that's pretty
Well,
much where
I guess you weren't going against what they said then. You're like, okay, I just won't land on it.
well, my doctors and my physios got to know me at a very young age, and so they
I would
knew how
say
it worked.
so.
So I think they knew what I was gonna do regardless of
Mhm.
what they said.
So how were you able to go from kind of that bad of a hit to going to win a competition? What was your mindset going into that?
Oh man, it was honestly it was so long ago that it's like when I think back, I'm like, wow, why was I riding through this like pain?
Yeah.
And on it, like it was just I love snowboarding. Like back then, it was so pure. Like I think as I got older, I thought like now I think so much about mindset, but back then it was just literally like, no, I'm just very stubborn,
Yeah.
and this is what I want to do. I said last year I wanted to go to this competition. This is like a really good opportunity,
Hmm.
and so I went there, and like yeah, that competition really changed everything for me because of the next year I got sponsored by Billabong. It was a Billabong rowing competition, so that was where I got my connection.
Wow.
Um, and then I got to go out to out west and meet all these other snowboarders, including like I beat some snowboarders who I had like in the snowboard magazine at the competition. So that was really cool for me.
Hmm.
And like really that was actually like one of my last big wins, which is so crazy because it's kickstarted my career. But once you get to all of a sudden you're at World Cups, it's like
Yeah.
you're fighting for 20th or 30th
Right.
position, which is a whole different game. And so like that competition really was really impactful for me. It really kickstarted both my connections in the industry. But what actually happened was when I went home, like for the summer, I think it was August, or no, actually, I was out in Whistler in July, and they announced that snowboarding would be in the 2014 Olympics. So that was like really cool.
That's very
And
cool.
then I came home and all of a sudden they said, "Hey, you are added to the junior national team." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's like all, under, I think it was under 8, maybe it was under 21 or something. I
Hmm.
forget what the age group was then. They've changed the team since then,
Yeah.
the team structure. But yeah, so you're on the junior national team." And I was like, "What?" I didn't even, like, someone had to message me. I didn't get an email from them. Like, it was literally a friend saw on their website because I had no idea how any of this stuff worked. But I guess because of my results in that
Yeah.
competition, so that's when, like, all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my god," like, because when you get named on this team for even insurance purposes, you have to hire a coach and all these
Hmm.
things. So that's when, like, that really kickstarted everything for
Hmm.
me of like really going all in on snowboarding.
So as far as going from last to first, I'm like if you're running cross country, obviously you just get faster. That's kind
Mhm.
of what you improve on. What are you drilling? What are you training? Like how do you get that much better in a year?
Yeah, that's I think that's the hard part coming from me who had like a really vast sport background than other athletes maybe that
Hmm.
were I was competing against, that I was in my head so often and pushing. I was my own like worst enemy. I was pushing myself more than anyone, and the reason was is because it didn't come natural to me.
Hmm.
And I believe, like, okay, hard work pays off. But in snowboarding, like, there's an element of, first off, it's a judge sport, so there's an
Hmm.
element of that you can't control.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it doesn't. And then there's the element of, like, you can't force, like, if I'm say you have to learn different tricks basically,
Hmm.
and like you want to progress to harder tricks, make them look better, improve how you're doing them, do them on bigger jumps. There's all these things. And like, for example, I'm doing, say, a 540 and I want to learn a 720. It's not like because I'm working so hard, all of a sudden I'm just going to land the
Yeah.
720. Like, some people learn things like that, and other people, it might take like 2 seasons to learn that trick. And so
Hmm.
that's like that was a very frustrating part, I think, for me with snowboarding that kind of led to me like beating myself up a lot about things. It's like I would go and say at the end of the season, I need to land all these runs. Like, these are the tricks
Hmm.
I need to know because
Yeah.
I want to be, the best in the world. And so I was like, so if I land these tricks, the next season I can land these tricks because building off those ones, and
Right.
then the season after, and then I have the best tricks.
Yeah.
And so you plan this all out, but you get, every day you go, you break it down, you say, okay, every day then I need to learn this or land this, and it doesn't happen sometimes. You try and you fall and you slam, and so really it's just a different perspective. Like, you can look at that way in like a linear program kind of in
Right.
most sports, but
Yeah.
you can't at all in snowboarding. And I tried to apply it, and it really, took a toll on my mind of me just being upset all the time. Like, I wasn't
Hmm.
happy because I'm like, I'm not landing this run. I'm not doing this. This person landed it, so much faster, and I'm working way harder than them. Like, I'm out
Yeah.
here 12 hours and then I'm at the gym and then they don't even go to the gym. And I think that's the issue. Like, I think
Yeah.
now looking back in perspective, I'm like, it's just such a different sport than other sports, and like,
Hmm.
things come and they go, and I think you learn the most actually when you're just having fun and enjoying it. One of
Yeah.
my friends, who she ended up making the 2014 Olympics, she was like, she's the most happy-go-lucky, just cruising, having
Yeah.
fun. Like, when you ride with it, there's no like training. It's just she just, goofing off. and
Yeah.
and so to see that was like a mindset click. I was like, yeah, like, she just loves it and just enjoys it, and that's just so
Hmm.
it was cool to see. Yeah.
For training, are you training in a foam pit or are you on snow the whole time when you're training tricks and stuff?
Yeah, so, like, at the time, like, they started getting airbags, like, started
Okay.
coming out as being popular, but, like, one snowboarder even, like, tore his, like, ACL on an airbag because, like, he
Oh,
landed and it was, like, sticky with, like,
yeah.
a layer of water kinda, and so, like, with the momentum of then landing and then stopping, he,
Yeah.
like, twisted his knee. So he actually still, he's one of the best snowboarders in Canada, and he doesn't use an airbag still. There's a couple of the best snowboarders in Canada that do not, like, X Games gold medalists, that just
Hmm.
don't use airbags, don't use foam pits, nothing. But then there's been a whole new breed of snowboarder because there's a coach in around the Montreal area
Okay.
who has been really coming up on the scene training some really good athletes. And some of those athletes have, like, gone on to also be X Games gold medalists and things like that, both on the male and female side. And he created this whole training center with a rope tow and, like, a new type of airbag. So the airbag actually looks like a snowboard landing,
Yeah.
but you can, like, try these tricks and, like, land it and all these things. So he built this whole training center, and now actually, like, the national team sends people to go to his center.
Very cool.
But back in the day, it wasn't hugely popular to use the airbags. People,
Yeah.
either some people didn't think it was cool, or some people thought it was more dangerous, or like even the jumps into the airbags weren't built the same as a normal jump. They're like
Oh,
really, really kicky. So it was kind of like it gave you this false sense like, oh, boom, like a backflip, but it's not like it's going to be much harder on the
right.
actual. So yeah, I didn't really get into airbags that much. I've used them a couple times, you know, did like a couple like flips and stuff into them, but otherwise,
Hmm.
I don't know, I just really wasn't that into it.
So when you had to send it, it wasn't like, oh, like I might, you had to commit every time you were
Yeah.
throwing a trick.
That's it. Exactly. You can literally just like smash your head or I've smashed my shoulders. I mean, yeah, I've had a lot of injuries and that's
Yeah,
yeah, that's the nature of the game, right? Like it's not like you're putting a new an added weight plate on the bar and going for a new PR. Like people ask
right.
me like, "Oh, are you scared? Like that's really heavy." And I'm like, "No, what's the worst that can happen? I bail it off my back. Like I'm not going 100 feet and landing on my head. It's
Right.
much better."
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you said you were training in the gym as well. Were you given a structured program for weightlifting, or what was kind of your goal in the gym?
Yeah, so my parents like you know, they were really smart about things. So I had two deals with them when I first got named to the junior national team. One,
Hmm.
I had to get strong because I knew how all these injuries and things like that. Like for starters, one thing I had been doing is that throughout high school, I'd been going to a trampoline coach. So
Okay.
in the fall and the spring, I would do trampoline training, and my brother came too. He's a skier. He doesn't compete, but he's into all that kind of stuff
He
too. And
enjoys
so,
it, like
yeah,
your mother,
yeah.
just enjoying it.
Exactly. But he is good. He is really good. Like he does flips and everything and on the
Yeah.
skis. But yeah, not as competitive. And so yeah, we went to trampoline training. So that was one thing. But
So
when it came
in trampoline training, I think the only actually I see a lot more of it on TikTok, but that's just teaching yourself kind of how to orient and like, well, what is that kind of for?
Yeah, that was a huge thing. My parents said they would watch us go off the diving board at the cottage and we didn't have good air awareness. And they're like, wait, but these guys want to like spin and flip off jumps on their snowboard and skis. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't okay. We need to put them into trampoline training. And
Hmm.
so yeah, we built up air awareness, got comfortable with like being in the air and like feeling those things. Cause like, you know, one time my brother said he almost crashed, like he was in the air of a ski jump and was like upside down and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna like, you know, have a really bad accident here, but his air awareness allowed him to twist around and make the fall much better. So
Hmm.
like just learning those things is important. I think the trampoline translates a little bit better to skis just because of the way you take off. It's really
Right.
hard to try to picture taking off sideways off a jump on a snowboard, but it
Yeah.
definitely helped me like, you know, just learn, okay, this is how I initiate my spins. This is how it's going to feel in the air. This is how it feels to fall and mess it up. So it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's very cool. So was this trampoline um, coach or whoever did he do just for snowboarders and skiers, or was that also trampoline as a sport?
Both. So
Okay,
he started a ski and snowboard session. So
nice.
basically like we signed up for the whole ski and snowboard session and then we once I like was progressing in snowboarding, I did like double the session. So instead of going for like an hour, we go like 2 hours.
Wow.
Um and so we would do like an extra session with him. But before, yeah, he had started actually a ski and snowboard session. That was like the really lucky part because that's pretty rare to find. But he
Hmm.
actually, yeah, he competed in trampoline. I think his wife, I don't know if I think she was an Olympian in trampoline. She was either an Olympian or like very, very, very high level.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did like they had the Olympic trampolines there, and so it was all like they had very strict trampoline like training for sure.
Hmm.
But then he opened up these sessions for skiers and snowboarders that we were
I,
in.
I think the mindset's probably a little bit different
Oh
when
yeah.
it comes to trampoline and then
Well,
skateboarding.
he had so many rules, like to even be able to flip, you had to do like all these routines, like trampoline routines and the basics. And
Yeah.
every time I would bring a friend for like the drop-in day to get them to go, they would never join trampolining because they said it's going to take me 3 classes to learn these things before I can even just try to do a flip. And I
Yeah.
said, well, that's just how it works. You have to learn the basics and know these things, and then you can do this, even if you can already, you know, do a flip on your
Right.
backyard base or your backyard trampoline.
Hmm.
And yeah, none of them were committed enough to stay. I like
Yeah.
a couple kind of did, but the rest were just like, no, I hate this. There's too many rules. And I was like, it's just the
Yeah.
first few classes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that provides a lot of answers to a lot of life when most people are like, oh yeah, I can kind of skip ahead, but I don't have the foundations. The foundations are they're important.
They are.
So you're obviously extremely active. How did you fuel yourself as far as nutrition wise? What were you eating during all this training and whatnot?
Yeah, like one thing I really noticed was, especially when you're out on the mountain, like how food affects your energy. Like, you're used to as a kid, like you go in for lunch and you have a big like poutine, like fries and then
Mhm.
burgers and gravy and all these things. And you feel horrible all afternoon, like horrible. And you don't want it. Like, I remember in my first season, once I was on the junior national team, I moved down to like past Toronto where there's like an
Okay.
actual snowboard team there.
Mhm.
And I was like boarding with a family there, and like getting picked up by my coach every day and all these things. And we always, like, all our progression was mid-morning. We did our warm-up, and then like we're focusing on the big things that we want to do. We eat a late lunch. After the lunch, it's more free riding. That's just like,
Mhm.
we're not learning new things, because everyone after that lunch is kind of like, you're out of it at that point. You've taken
Yeah.
this break, you're digesting your food. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that, like when they go into the ski lodge and they pick all these really like gross foods.
Yeah.
um then it's just not really helpful for the rest of your day of skiing or snowboarding. To be fair, now that I just go for fun, that's what I do too. But
Yeah.
but yeah, back then all of a sudden I started realizing like, no, this is really important. So one thing I did is I had like a protein bar sponsor. And
Nice.
so I would like stash my pockets, and then I would make my own like mix of like cereal, and like I'm allergic to nuts, so I can't have normal trail mix.
Oh no.
But yeah, so I would make like my own type of kind of trail mix ish.
Just M&Ms.
Yeah, well, actually no M&Ms, but yeah, like cause a little bit of some sugary cereal and like
Mhm.
some other like more kind of like fibery things and stuff. And so my goal was like, I want to snowboard as long as I can until, late afternoon, just
Right.
not take a lunch really, like just snack all the time, because I knew once I went inside, took that break, I'm just mentally checked out.
Yeah.
And so I would try to do that and then like go down and then go to the gym and everything.
So what were you doing as far as the gym goes? Because I think most people, when they go to the gym that are listening, most of them are probably doing it for aesthetics, or they're just kind of looking for size. What was your training like in the gym?
Yeah, so my first trainer that I got, which was like the year after high school, she was the strength and conditioning coach for the university hockey team. And so my parents, like we all like kind of interviewed her, but they had a connection with the coach of the team
Yeah.
who recommended her. And she was also, which was really cool, was getting her master's in sports psychology. So she was able
Very helpful.
to, yeah, so she gave me a lot of homework on my mindset stuff. And then in the gym, we would meet up a few times a week. She didn't have a car, so I'd drive downtown, pick her up, go to the university gym,
Well,
and we
that's
would
nice
train
of you.
together. Yeah. Well, otherwise that was like my training deal.
Yeah.
I would have no trainer. And yeah, and so we would go and we would train. And so it was very strength and conditioning, focused. So people who train for aesthetics, it would be very different. Like it's really sport specific focus. We would do like a lot of squats, basically a lot of the basics, because I hadn't been doing a ton of training before that.
Hmm.
I was naturally powerful, but I needed to like actually learn the mechanics of the squat, the
Yeah.
proper pull-ups, like put like all these different movements, balance training. We would go to the field once a week and do a lot of agility and sprint and back and forth as well.
Mm.
And so we did that for a couple years, and she moved because she finished school. And she sent me all my training programs and said, hey, like you like, and I figured out how to do it myself. I actually
Nice.
ended up getting my personal training certification then, because I
Oh,
got
very
really into
cool.
it.
Yeah.
I had an injury, and so I had all this time just to research things. That's what I would.
Mhm.
That's the cool thing. If you're injured, like I would spend all my time when I'm injured just researching things. So like
Yeah.
nutrition or training. And so yeah, so I got that. I actually started coaching like some local ski and snowboard teams, doing
Very
strength and
cool.
conditioning for them during my off season, and then yeah, doing the same thing for myself. Then a friend told me, she's like, "Hey, you should come try this CrossFit thing," and I was like, "No!" Like back then, especially in the strength and conditioning world, people really hated it.
Yeah.
So I was like, "No, no, no!" And then she used to be a pro skier, so I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll
So
come."
so are you still on the junior national team at this point?
So this time I'm not on the junior, I'm on the national development team. So basically like I was on the national team for 4 seasons. The
Okay.
first couple was junior, and then I moved up to the development team. So basically like they had like 2 or 3 pro riders on like the senior team is what they
Yeah.
called it. And then basically most of us were on like basically it's like the B team, I guess. And then they had this junior team. Now they call it
Okay.
like next gen, and then they have just the national team, which
Okay.
is split up into kind of like an A team and a B team.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so we I'm like losing my train of thought, but
Oh, so we were starting CrossFit, but so before that,
yes.
sports psychology, I think could you touch on that a little bit? Because I think like you touched on before, it's like, yeah, I didn't really know what my mindset was. Now, what was some of the things that she was able to kind of bring to light to you as a sports psychologist?
Yeah, we worked on a lot of like visualization stuff, like really the basics of
Mhm.
sports psychology. That was most of what we worked together with, and just like she'd give me like kind of like sheets of paper and to answer different questions and go through like, how do I feel about this? Some goal setting stuff, different things like that. But then when I actually was on the junior national team and down in past Toronto, my coach was also really into like visualization and meditation, and so
Mhm.
he would send a lot of articles and get us to do these things as well. And
Yeah.
then being on the national team, then we had access to a sports psychologist as well with the team, and
Very
that's where I'd
cool.
have like actual like Zoom sessions with this sports psychologist, even like while I was at events and everything,
Yeah.
and really talking through like building on the basics of like, okay, yeah, visualization, meditation, these things. This is where we were really talking through like, hey, like I have this competition tomorrow. I'm really scared because this jump is like, I've fallen on it this many times, or
Yeah.
all these things, and that's where we'd really talk through some of those things and try to work through fear and stuff like that. So yeah, so it really progressed kind of like working on the basics, especially when I was like 17. She was more giving me things to like subconsciously be working on my mindset,
Yeah.
because at the time I'd be like, no, I don't want to do this. I was, it's so funny because I always say if I could connect with her now and like show her like, who I am in the gym, it would be a whole totally different person, because back
Yeah.
then, I was into it and I loved like training, but I was also like joking around all the time, and having like an older person to talk to,
Right.
I was like joking and just kind of being a brat. And
Mhm.
now I think like, the gym is really, it's like my life, and like that's, so
Right.
I think it would be interesting to see the difference
For
from
sure. So
me
we're
then to now.
on the national team. Your friend says, "Hey, I got this Kool-Aid. You should come join this CrossFit, or come give this a try." What was that like?
Yeah, so I picked her up. We went, and the first workout was like, I think it was 100 burpee pull-ups for time or something. And I was like, what the heck? And the worst part is, I brought my water bottle and I put it beside me, and I took like breaks for water. They're like, what are you doing? This workout is
Yeah.
only like 10 minutes long or less. And I'm like, well, drinking my water. They're like, no, like you can go 10 minutes without drinking your water. I was like, oh yeah, I guess so. So I put
Yeah.
my water bottle aside, but then I was hooked because I beat my friend. And so, everyone all of a sudden is like, oh, you're good at this. And I'm like, oh, like all pumped up.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, this is awesome. But then I still had like my strength and conditioning and stuff to do. And so I wasn't super into it, but she convinced me at least there was an Olympic lifting class, and I
Mhm.
had never gotten into Olympic lifting. And so she convinced me to sign up for the Olympic lifting class. So I got
Mhm.
like a 6 pack of drop-in passes or something. And so I tried to learn like how to clean and how to snatch and these
Yep.
things before my season started. Because I think it was like around the fall when I had picked her up and taken her. So my season was getting pretty close.
Mhm.
So I did that, kind of stayed in touch with people over the winter, but did my normal training over that winter.
Right.
And then when I came back, her boyfriend became a coach. He's now an owner of that gym, but he
Nice.
was becoming a coach. He had his strength and conditioning certifications, and I guess for some extra certification, he needed to train like a national or professional athlete. Um,
Probably for his Olympic lifting, right? Or was it just
Maybe,
for?
yeah. It
Yeah.
could be, yeah. So he gave me a training program. Basically, it was like the Wendler, whatever the Wendler program
Yep.
is
Yep.
essentially.
Just
So
just get stronger. Just get much
exactly.
stronger.
Yeah, but it was funny because like I mean going into that, I think my squat, like when I first walked into even the CrossFit gym, I could already squat over 200. So people were
Nice.
already like, how like they were impressed, I guess. And I was like, for me, I didn't know what any numbers meant because I'd been going
Right.
to the gym by myself, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if I was good or not, or whatever. And so he gave me this Wendler program, and so I did it for the summer. And then he said, like, come by and like I'll help you with Olympic lifting, and I'll just help you for free. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So
So
I came
did
by.
you do the shoulder press bar of the Wendler as well, or was it just
Um,
bench, squat, and
no,
deadlift?
I did Penlay row because
Okay.
I had my AC joint. I hurt my AC joint that
Okay.
season, and I couldn't do anything overhead.
Yeah.
And I had also hurt my elbow. I basically landed with like an extended arm on a jump, which is like it's kind of normal. Like you land a jump, you land a little bit on like your back leg, and your arm
Mm-hmm.
hits the ground. But like it hit the ground and like it kind of extended, and that kind of happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hurt like the MCL of my elbow, I think.
Okay.
And so yeah, so I was doing Penlay row instead of the shoulder press.
Yeah. So
And
for those that don't know, Wendler is just 5-3-1. Your last set, you max out. You do that for 3 weeks, progressively getting a little bit more weight, and then you rest for a week, and then you kind of lather, rinse, repeat, and it works pretty well.
yeah, I got a lot stronger for sure.
Mhm.
And I had never deadlifted before, which is weird. So like as a snowboarder, you'd think I would have deadlifted, but I
Yeah.
think because I was training myself, I was always scared. I don't know, like the internet makes you scared of the deadlift because
Yeah.
you think that you could do it wrong, and I had no one with me and
Hmm.
ever. So I was like, I don't want to do it wrong. And but then yeah, my deadlift quickly progressed, and I learned all these things. And then yeah, I came to the gym and he was teaching me Olympic lifting, and then he would be like, oh my God, this girl came in and she just already snatched like 100 pounds her first day. So he would like hype me up, and
Yeah.
then same with I think my first clean and jerk was 135 or something. And
That's
so
not
he was,
bad.
yeah. So like for my first, kind of day, he was
Yeah.
already, everyone at the gym was already hyped. And we had one guy at the gym who's a CrossFit Games athlete. And so for
Is that the what is his name? Um,
Paul Tremblay.
oh, okay. I was thinking of the other Canadian then.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe like Vellner, Frykowski, or Lucas.
Lucas.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Lucas and I are good friends now,
Oh, really?
actually.
I went to his gym when I was up there. I want to say it was like 4 years ago in Vancouver. We were up in
Okay.
that area, so I
He
didn't
lives
know if
in Ottawa now. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. No, yeah. We're Lucas and I are really good friends, actually.
very cool.
We share an apparel sponsor, which he kind of led me into that. But yeah.
Nice, very nice. So
Yeah.
we're cleaning 135.
Yes. So like having the praise of like a CrossFit Games athlete, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And I start thinking like my whole childhood, like I was like, if I found CrossFit as a teenager, I think this would be like really good for me. Like it's really hard work,
Yeah.
pays off. And it's all these different like sports combined. And I'm like, this is
Mm.
so cool. I'm being challenged in all these different things. It's not just weightlifting. I would get really bored, I think, if I was only doing snatch and clean and jerk.
Yeah.
And just combining all these different things is really cool. So I kind of started getting into it. And then during one of the training sessions that we had learning the Olympic lifts, he said, oh, me and my friend, and they're both like regional level athletes. And so they're like, we're doing this workout. Do you want to join? I'm like, sure. I know none of the movements in the workout. They literally just threw me in. It had toes to bar and I'm like, what is a toes to bar? Chest to bars. I'm like, what is a chest to bar?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did it with them and I was like, oh my God, this is hard. And so I just kept coming back until finally he convinced me. He's like, just get a membership. He's like, I've been programming for you. You do things on your own, but like, just come. I think you could be really good at CrossFit and it'll be good cross training. Because already like the national team, they're not really doing that much training. Like a lot of the athletes, like, it's a part. I had talked with one of the coaches a couple years ago, strength and conditioning coaches, as I was picking his brain on a couple things, and he was saying like a lot of it is just trying to convince them, like, because it's an anti-culture kind of to train,
Right.
and so a lot of them all of a sudden they tear their ACL and realize, oh my God, what have I been doing? I should be training.
Right.
And but they're trying to get it to the point where they're not having to realize this before they get into the gym.
Yeah.
But it definitely is like
prehab instead of rehab.
Yeah, but they can't give them this like super crazy training program because they won't stick to it. They just won't, like, it's just not their thing. So that's why like I found that, any training program the national team gave me was just kind of like, it's just like spin out after riding and then do this. And it wasn't like enough. And so that's why they actually gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted that last season after I started CrossFit.
Yeah.
Like all the coaches said, yeah, like you're already, you're training more than what we're going to give you. So you can do what you want.
Yeah.
And yeah, so basically I started doing CrossFit going into my last season of snowboarding. And then they were just telling me like I learned to muscle up first try. And I was really progressing quickly. Like again, snowboarding I said was hard for me, but back in the day, like sports did, they were more natural.
Yeah.
And so yeah, things started progressing. I think I hit back then I was like, this is like 5 years now, but it's like I hit a 250-pound back squat, which I was really impressed because I think like all we did was like 70% type work, and all of a sudden to hit this back squat, I was like, oh my God, like what is this CrossFit thing?
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, I think most people that lift all the time, they're like, oh, I just had to max all the time every day. And I think if you get a good program, like you can see progress without just lifting heavy all the time.
Yeah, it's like 3 months later and I'm like, oh my God, I PR'd, like how, and because before I was on Wendler, so it was like more like PRing all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it was very different. And so then so I got really into it. The guy who was running the gym, who was a CrossFit Games athlete, was like, you could go to the games in a couple years. And I was like, okay, like, sure.
Yeah.
I was like, sure, like, I'm gonna do that too. And so then I continued CrossFitting my whole season, trying to do it on my own, but mostly I was doing more lifting because it was hard to like after you've spent like 8 hours riding to like go and try to do a Metcon or something
Yeah.
was like pretty exhausting, especially, like you want to get your food in and everything. But I would try to do like we had such a great national
So
team training center. So
So how much did your intake change as far as food went since you're doing CrossFit and snowboarding at the same time?
yeah, so I made some mistakes the first few months, I think, because basically leading up to like I guess that whole fall into Christmas, everyone at CrossFit was like at that time they were like paleo, paleo, and I was like okay, and so I did this paleo thing, but like also remember that I'm allergic to nuts, so like
Hmm.
I it's like paleo, but like if I'm not eating nuts, I'm not getting that many of like the calories either,
Yeah.
and so yeah, everything was paleo. When I came back for Christmas, there's some pictures I think in December of in when I was
Hmm.
at the gym in Whistler, and I weighed in at like 20 pounds than my usual lowest. Like I was super lean,
Wow.
yeah, everyone was like, "Oh, you're so jacked," but I was like, I looking back, I'm like, no, I look like an endurance runner in my
Yeah.
opinion.
We don't want that.
I
As far as paleo goes, that's pretty much just meat and sweet potatoes
yeah,
and some
seriously,
nuts and
exactly.
like a little fruit.
Yeah, uh-huh. And I'm also like a really weird person with vegetables. I like need really cooked vegetables. I just don't really like vegetables to be
Yeah.
honest. That's why every day I have greens powder now because
Hmm.
I just know I'm not going to eat. I don't eat salad. Like I'll cook broccoli and asparagus and Brussels sprouts and all those things, but like I got to cook it. And
Yeah.
so it's not really something I incorporate with my all my meals. And so that's why I try to get it any way I can. So yeah, back then I was really just I was just eating the bare minimum. So then when I went back to the season, I was like, okay, this is like way too light for me to be.
Yeah.
I mean, even compared to snowboard standards, I was still pretty strong and like
Yeah.
a bigger athlete, which helped because I got like speed for jumps that other people wouldn't maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started like increasing my intake. That's when I had a protein bar sponsor, like I said. So I would really like focus on what I was eating during the day. I would have
Hmm.
like a big rice bowl, like eggs, rice, spinach, avocado, things for breakfast. Basically just like yeah, I think actually in the rest of the season I put back on all that pounds.
There you go.
To be fair, we were traveling for competition and had a lot of places with like really nice buffets at the hotels, so that definitely contributed. I remember one time I got injured at this one competition. I think it was like the Hilton in Quebec City or something,
Okay.
and they had like they had every single thing you can imagine, even like mussels and everything, all in the buffet. Like it was like a
Wow.
fancy buffet. But they had cheesecake one night, and I remember I think I ate like a whole cheesecake. But yeah, I definitely I definitely learned that I needed to fuel myself more because I was like,
Hmm.
whoa, like I don't want to be this lean,
Right.
and and so yeah, I definitely like put my increase my intake and put back on some pounds, and then yeah, that was my last snowboard season,
So
and
how did you know that, was it kind of in 4 year stints, or how did you know that was your last season?
yeah, so it was a personal decision. It was really difficult. Like it was so basically I guess that was 2015. So the 2014 Olympics leading up to it, I had a bunch of injuries. And so the World Cups that I needed to do to even open up another spot for our team, like you can get up to 4 spots per country,
Hmm.
but we only opened up 2 spots for our women's team. And I was injured for most of them. So all of a sudden I come back, I have like 2 World Cup events left, and I basically have to win them. But the thing about the World Cup events is like you're competing against the people who are winning the Olympics. Like it's all the same athletes. It's not like you're
Yeah.
competing, within your team. Like I need to come and basically beat the people who are going to win the Olympics to be
Yeah.
able to earn a spot to go to the Olympics. When I know that just like not possible. So really I was on a 2018 trajectory.
Hmm.
So I just missed out on the Olympics. I think I was like a few spots out. My one of my best friends made it, and so that was awesome. I remember then I hurt my AC joint, and I was on the couch just watching her compete at like the early mornings because it was Sochi time,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that was really difficult. Then going into the next season, I was healthy. I had done this CrossFit thing. I found like some new community. That was the thing with snowboarding is because I found like I had my snowboard friends, but they're all around the world, so I didn't
You're
see them
right.
all summer.
Yeah.
And I couldn't like a lot of them would go to Australia or New Zealand all summer, so they were year round on the team kind of, but I couldn't
Wait,
afford
what
to.
were they doing in Australia?
It's a different winter. So they can snowboard in the
Oh.
summer, which is Australia's winter. Yeah.
I was just thinking that it was just hot there all the
Oh
time.
yeah. No, they have some really great mountains, New Zealand and Australia. Actually, my snowboard coach here, one of my first snowboard coaches was from New Zealand. But yeah, they were really lucky. And like I struggle a lot with my seasons because I had to pay for everything and I had to
Yeah.
make it work. A lot of people might have had, maybe richer families that were paying for a lot of their things.
Right.
That's a big thing. Like snowboarding, skiing is not it's not a cheap sport.
Right.
And so for me, I was really like maximizing my budget all the time
Mhm.
and relying on sponsors, relying on if I can win some prize money, maybe I can extend my season and all these things,
Yeah.
and working all summer. And so I found like I kind of would distance from any of my like old school friends in the winter because I was gone, and then
Right.
I would kind of like distance from my other friends. So when I found CrossFit, it was like a new community for me.
Mhm.
And I started like feeling kind of homesick throughout the first part of the season, and I really looked forward to like coming home for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then, so I kind of felt a little bit off because I was like, I'm literally living like my dreams. I'm in Whistler, I'm riding, I'm doing all these things.
Yeah.
Like, how come it just doesn't feel right? And I know I've had these glimpses in the past of like, is this the right sport for me? Do I still love it? And all these things. Like, I would journal, and looking back, I would see these things that I'd written in the past seasons before that. But I would always be like, no, that's stupid. You've invested so much time. Like, forget about it,
Yeah.
And but this season was very different. And then I think it was January, I went down to Pennsylvania for competition, and all the teammates and my coach, they flew in, and I had to drive because it was like only 10 hours away. So
Only 10
yeah.
hours.
But yeah, then we didn't have to rent a car and all these
Yeah.
things. So I just said I'll drive instead of flying. And I think it was cheaper than flying as well. So drove down, met them, picked them up at the hotel, and then we get to this competition. And basically the way one of the jumps was built was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of sketchy. And so a lot of people were getting injured in the practice sessions. And by the end of the like when the competition day came, 50% had either dropped out of the competition or got injured, which is like insane. Like you don't see
Wow.
that. You don't go to a hockey tournament and 50% of the players got injured,
Yeah.
in
Because
the
the ice is too slick.
like it's just a crazy sport, right? So actually I was like one of the only people on my team and the group that I came with that didn't get injured. One in the morning of our last practice day, one of my teammates broke her ankle and got sent to the hospital. The other teammate, so basically we're getting to our last run, and our
Yeah.
coach says, okay, Nat, are you feeling like fine with what you've done today? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm good. I don't have to hit this jump anymore. And my teammate says, no, I still need to do it another time. So we're standing on the jump above, and she goes, and I just see her like the way she takes off. She's basically now flying like headfirst through the air. So because she just like caught her edge on the takeoff.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not good. So immediately we know something's wrong, right? So we like head down, and basically she like flew and landed straight on her ribs, and she's coughing out blood. She doesn't know where she is, and this is also the second time that
Right.
in the last couple of years that I've been with her for a really bad injury and preventing her from like going into shock.
Yeah.
But like treating her, like she's spitting out blood and then asking me whose blood is beside her. It was like I was going into shock, basically,
Yeah.
like watching this. And so she had to basically be rushed to another hospital. So I'm the only one. Like my coach is gone. My teammates are in two different places, and I'm like, I have the car, so I'm like, I have to like rendezvous between the mountains, but I also
Yeah.
have to prep for my own competition. So it was like really, really crazy.
Mm.
Another Canadian rider who was there with another coach, she broke her, I think like her shoulder. And so, yeah, basically it's just a disaster competition.
That event is not off to a good start.
No, but this is the thing. Like, they don't delay events. They don't change things. If the weather is bad, they really don't change things. So they say, oh, we have a TV schedule, or oh, we have this event schedule, or people have flights. So they don't change things. Like, that's the issue. Is like, I think it's becoming better that there's now like athlete kind of like not unions, but like,
Right.
they get together and they say,
Advocacy,
no,
yeah.
like we're not competing today because the weather is bad.
Mm.
So, yeah. So basically, we have all these things that are happening. I get to the competition day. I have to like do this competition. There was so much fog, I couldn't even see a jump in front of me. They actually, in the end, took out that last jump because you couldn't get speed for it because of the weather. So it's like in the end, everyone hurt themselves on this thing that just got taken out. So basically, the whole event was like, can you see the jump and can you hit it? It became not an event of like, what trick can you do? It was like, who can survive?
Yeah.
So basically, I do my runs. We immediately have to go to the hospitals. My coach takes a cab to the other hospital, the more urgent care one that the girl with the broken ribs is in.
Mm.
I take one to go pick up the girl who has the broken ankle.
Yeah.
So I pick her up. She needs surgery, but she's not going to get it till she goes back to Canada. So go pick up her medication, everything. Then we drive all like an hour and a half to the other hospital.
Man.
we go see the other girl, and just seeing her with like that thing taking out blood from her lungs and all these things is just, it was just like eye-opening. And then her parents, her mom had driven all the way from like Toronto down and finally got there, and just seeing her talking to us in the hallway about like, maybe I need to talk to her about like, maybe this is it for snowboarding, you know.
Wow.
That was like, I think I was just trying to keep it together in front of her
Mhm.
mom. But then when the competition was over and I had to drive home 10 hours by myself, I shut down
That's a
everything.
long time.
Yeah, I think I cried like the whole way. Seriously. Like I just started thinking about all my life decisions and realizing like, what if I did this to my parents? Like I don't want them to come to the hospital and like I'm paralyzed or something, or
Yeah.
you know, like I just started thinking. And then I had all these passions. I had been going to business school online throughout my snowboard career, which was a deal with my parents, but I'd
What?
always
When?
been, yeah,
Wait.
just add
I feel like we're training. We're on the national team, which is not something you just kind of do. And then CrossFit is something that you definitely don't just kind of do. And then we're also doing business school.
Yes, it was an agreement with my parents. If I was going to do snowboarding, they were like, you have to do university too. So I would chip away. It took me like, I don't even know, probably like 7 or 8 years to finish my degree, because I took like, courses when I was injured, or
Right.
I would take like one course during, and take 3 months to finish it, and then another course, because I would chip away at it like after riding. And I couldn't add too much to my plate
Right.
while I
Your
was
plate
riding. Like,
was filled
yeah,
pretty
like
full.
technically, yeah, you're not supposed to. Like when you're on the national team, like they actually have like a program where if you're like a carded athlete, so you get like a little bit of money from the government for being an athlete, they give you like a free year of university. But you're supposed to use it after you've done your time. So I actually did, like, because I still had many courses to finish when I
Yeah.
retired. So I did take that money and use it for a year of my schooling afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it was good for me because of all the injuries I had. It was something to work on at that time.
Yeah.
Like before, I said I would go into nutrition or fitness when I was injured. I'd research things, so it gave me something to do. But yeah, so I was doing this and I was realizing, I've always been passionate about entrepreneurship. Oh yeah, I'll add this in. I also had started my business my last year because I had to work, right? Like I had to make money to fund some of my snowboard career.
Yeah.
And so one of the local companies, sports stores around here, who was also one of my early sponsors, asked me if I could do all the social media for their business. And
Nice.
I was like, they knew that I was into business school, I was into marketing.
Hmm.
And I said, yeah, that sounds like exactly my wheelhouse. And so that actually kickstarted like my agency that I have now, started from that. But it gave me an opportunity that I could train that whole summer. I didn't have to get a shitty summer job. I was
Yeah.
able to train at the gym all summer, and because I can work remote and do basically do all this work in my free time.
Yeah.
And so that was something I did all throughout the winter as well. And so anyways, I had a ton going on that was pulling me in
Yeah.
different directions. And just this injury, I think, was kind of the nail in the coffin to how I had been feeling.
Hmm.
It was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because my coaches sat me down. They said, okay, Natalie, like 2018 is your trajectory. But when we talk about injuries, it's like, it's not an if another injury is going to happen, it's just when, how big it's
Right.
going to be, right? Like that's just nature. So I said,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to go all in on the rest of the season to make sure it's the right decision. Like I knew I wanted to retire, but I said, I would be really upset if I just called it now. I'm
Hmm.
going to spend all of my money, I'm going to do everything, go to every event,
Yeah.
and just like make sure that's what I want to do. And so one of our biggest World Cups, I actually ended up breaking my ribs, which was not great. And my coaches were like really upset. They wanted me to stay and do the competition. It was another thing where the competition, I basically, it was a practice the competition. The weather changed, and after I broke my ribs, then they say, oh, we're moving the World Cup till 2 days from now because of the weather. I'm like, why didn't you do that this morning? And I wouldn't have,
Right.
gotten hurt, right? But that's just the nature of the game. Changing winds and all these things happen. Basically, I landed like 100 feet to my back, and so they thought like in 2 days with all their technology machines, I would be better. And I was like, that's just, I don't think I'm going to be
What did they
better.
have you on?
They said like, oh, we have all these different machines that we can like wrap around your back with the cold and the compression and this. And I'm like, no, like that's just no. Anyways, they just thought all these things are gonna like help, like also
Yeah.
at that time, like we thought I had definitely dislocated some ribs. We didn't know if they had some fractures or if they were broken, but they were thinking like, maybe it's just muscular and you're gonna be fine.
So do they get out? Do they get anything out of you competing?
So it really, most of the time it was me pushing myself, but in this
Okay.
situation, it was really important competition because like this will help me one, be on the national team then the year after. Two,
Got it.
like this is worth the most amount of points in my whole season.
Okay.
But it also like it does matter, like, you know, how each individual rider does just for like funding of the team and things like that does matter as well. But yeah, like I remember they even called my parents because I said, no, I'm not doing this. And they like called my dad to try to convince him to like let me stay. And I just told my dad, I said, Dad, like I don't want to be here. Please just tell them like you say I have to come home or something.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just took the train home the next day. I said like I don't want to be here. And that was kind of like the end of it, because a big thing for me too is like no matter what injury I had, like with the tailbone, I would still want to push myself, and I would still like I didn't care, and I would make no excuses. But this whole season, it was like, oh, I have a headache. Oh, like my ankle hurts. Oh, like my hip injury is flaring up again, and I want to just go down. And I was like, that's not who I want to be. Like when it comes to sports, like I want to be like who I am. It's just like I felt like I was straying from my identity based on just like I wanted to stay in snowboarding, but clearly I would just like I was scared, to be honest. Like I don't want to get hurt again. I don't want to do these, and so I'm making excuses. And I can see the way my coaches are looking at me like this isn't, you know, like why is she making this excuse? Why is she saying this? Like that's just not who I wanted to be. And so as the season progressed and different things happened, I still gave my all. I think at nationals I came fourth, which wasn't bad, and that was my second last competition, basically my last like kind of important competition. And then yeah, that was it. I messaged my coaches in the spring after the season was over, and I said I just need to take a break. Like I'm dealing with some stuff, and really, you know, I kind of knew that maybe it's more than a break, but I wanted to leave that option open. But basically say I'm not going to be on the national team next year. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of the road there. But it was really, really hard. Like there were just a lot of like mental health issues that I was going through dealing with all this stuff, as well as just like the fact that I was honestly I was scared. I didn't want to hurt myself again, and how that would impact my life. And looking back, I miss it a ton, but at the same time, seeing some of my friends and they're doing like triple flips and stuff now, like no, I think I made the right decision. I don't want to be doing triple flips.
We're okay with it. So you're done with that. So did CrossFit look like it was just a training outlet, or did it look like it was going to be, you wanted to be a competitor for it? Because you mentioned he's like, hey, you could go to the games. Like, what did that look like as far as your path?
So that's been a process for me, because I found like something that my aunt is really into, like mindfulness and balance. And she's like, Nat, you need to do something just for fun. I'm like, no, nothing is for fun. Like,
what do you mean?
Yeah, I was like, no. And so, you know, really CrossFit was good in ways. It also, I think, I mean, in most ways it was good. I think in some ways it was a coping mechanism for me. Like it was like, okay, I'm dealing with this depression after my career, this anxiety, and like here's a way where I can like, you know, kind of give a reason to be like, hey, like now I'm going to be like this pro CrossFitter, and people who, you know, saw I retired from snowboarding, then they'll still see me as an athlete, and they'll still, you know, that was a big thing. I think the identity part of retiring from sport, but then also I think, you know, it'll give people reason in snowboarding. They'll be like, especially I went to a competition the year after, my friend's like, oh my God, you're crushing CrossFit. Like now you do that. And so then they think that I quit snowboarding because I was really good at this. Right. And so for me, I think it was a coping mechanism in some ways. So I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to be competitive. Like I need that competitive outlet. So I threw myself like fully into, like I spent all my days at the gym, like hours, like the whole day. I was just there and training with everybody. And what actually ended up happening was a year after, I ended up getting mono, like 2 weeks before the CrossFit Open happened. Which I didn't realize. I thought I had just like a sinus infection or something. I did the first workout. I had a heart problem. I went to the hospital later that night. It turned out I had pericarditis. So like
no idea what that is, but a heart problem does not sound good.
No. So basically it felt like my heart like really hurt basically. And I just didn't say anything until I was like, my parents drove me to the hospital. And the sac around your heart is inflamed. Like for example, my resting heart rate was like 90. And I was like, that's not normal.
That's not ideal.
Which is crazy. When you go to the hospital, they say 90 is normal. And they're like, no. And they made me wait all night to go see someone.
They said 90 was normal?
They say it's in their rule book, because most of the population is not in shape. They say like if it's under 100 to whatever, they think, oh, maybe you're just like nervous of being at the hospital or whatever. And they say like, oh, it's not to be concerned. But I'm like, no, I showed them. I was like, listen, like I know what my normal heart rate is.
What's your normal?
like 50, you know,
Yeah.
like I was like, this is not normal. Like
Yeah.
I told them, I'm like, I'm chill right now. Like I'm very chill and it's
Hmm.
90. Like there's
Yeah.
something
Well,
wrong.
when I usually go to the doctor, they're like, "Oh, you a runner?" I'm like, I really don't like to run. Like I more so do CrossFit and a lot of other different movement type stuff. But I'm like, I always hate being accused of being just a runner. That's the only way my heart rate can be down.
I know. I hate when, yeah. I know. So yeah, it was just, yeah, it was crazy. I spent the night there. Again, so that friend who first brought me into CrossFit, she actually was becoming a doctor. She was in her last year of med school at that point. So she was texting me and she actually had predicted, she's like, sounds kind of like my pericarditis, but it's really rare. So you probably don't have it. And
That's
then
a pretty impressive call.
yeah, and then yeah, I actually told the doctor, I said, hey, my friend actually like kind of called this. She was like, oh, tell her good job. Like, and so I remember messaging her like 3 a.m. I was like, good job.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically I wasn't, it's like just inflammation of the sac around your heart. But the thing was like I was gonna redo that workout on Monday. So good thing I didn't because
Yeah.
you could cause permanent damage and then you get myocarditis, which is like chronic inflammation of the heart. And like I think it's like liquid in the sac of the heart or something.
Hmm.
And then basically I wouldn't be, yeah, I'd have heart problems for life. So this pericarditis actually, it's unfortunate because it does come back sometimes. Like sometimes I feel my heart hurting.
Hmm.
But when I talk to the doctor, they say like, just take an anti-inflammatory or something, which I don't really like to take those things. So um but yeah, I couldn't get my heart rate up, so I had to stop the open. Like I literally was not allowed. Like even I would drive and someone would like cut me off and I could feel my heart hurt because it was just like that, like a little increase of stress.
Wow.
So I couldn't do anything. But basically a couple weeks later when I went to my doctor, she looked at my blood test and said, oh, like you have mono. She just said it like as if I knew. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they didn't even tell me that at the hospital. And she was like, yeah, like I'll do a double check and test it again. Turns out like that's what I had. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like how crazy. And so yeah, so I guess basically like you have some of these infections. Like I ended up having bronchitis as well. So like you get those lung
Perfect.
infections, your body is like sending all these antibodies and stuff and fighting, but
Yeah.
it starts fighting your heart by accident is how this happens. So they actually don't know where
Come on,
pericarditis,
guys. Let's
yeah,
focus here.
they don't really know where pericarditis comes from, but what is interesting this year with COVID is they have seen that there's been pericarditis cases with some of those college football players
Okay.
that had gotten COVID. And
Yeah.
my theory, just thinking, I'm not a doctor, but my theory is similar, where it's like they trained through this respiratory illness,
Right.
not knowing how severe it was or whatever. Like I had bronchitis and I just thought, you know what, I still need to like the open is coming.
Yeah.
And so then your body is like, oh my God, like trying to fight these things. And it goes and fights your heart. So it does seem like this is linked somehow a little bit to respiratory illnesses.
Respiratory. Yeah.
Yeah, but then anyways, this mono got worse, and I literally had to take 6 months off doing anything, which was horrible.
That's a
Uh,
long time.
I was tired all the time. It was crazy. Like I would walk around the block and feel feverish. Like
Yeah.
yeah. It goes to show like you can be fit, but some of these illnesses like will really affect you. And
Yep. They're gonna win.
yeah, and so that really affected me. But it gave me a perspective. It was like, okay, I spent this whole year just diving into this other thing. Now I have to deal with some of these things that I've been going through. And so I had I spent a lot of time with family, spent a lot of time chilling. And that was the first time I really got a taste of like, okay, like balance is important. Caring about like this is probably some sort of like warning sign, like, hey, you've been pushing
Yeah.
for too long. The minute you retired from this, you just like not going to deal with that, dive into this.
Yeah.
And so so I pushed hard in CrossFit trying to come back at it. And I ended up like we tried to send a regionals team. I think it was a few years ago, and it was definitely the year that I had my best regionals or my best open performance. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for, I think it was a year with like the handstand walks and the handstand push-ups that came in, the first year that there was handstand walks.
Yeah.
I'm horrible. My overhead is horrible. Like I said, when I was doing Wendler, I couldn't do the overhead
Right.
because of my AC joint.
Yeah.
So I have a really like that's my biggest weakness of all is anything overhead, especially handstand push-ups and handstand walks.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for that workout, I think most of my other workouts were like, I think I would have placed maybe top 30 in the region. And I think at that time regionals was top 20 or something
Yeah.
like that. So like I was definitely progressing. Like I had a really good year of training. And definitely was like, I put everything into this. And our team was one spot away from qualifying, unfortunately. We had a few other poor workouts and stuff that happened. And yeah, so then now last year I did a couple sanctionals. I went to Strength and Depth in London. I did Asia CrossFit Championships in
Awesome.
Shanghai. That was really cool. But yeah, this last year I was actually, after that competition, I went to Bali. I crashed my motorbike and hurt my other AC joint.
When were you in Bali?
Last May, not this
Okay.
year, but the year before.
Okay. My wife and I went to Bali for our honeymoon. So
Oh
we,
yeah, it's a popular spot.
yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so I crashed my motorbike. A cat ran right in front of my bike and I had to dodge it
Mm,
is what happened. And so I hurt my other AC joint. And so really this has been my first year of kind of just changing my training, I guess, in a sense, like because I was so CrossFit, and then I came back and was like, okay, overhead is my weakness. That's all I need to work on. And now again, I can't do
right.
it. So I've just been like, learning new things. I've been like, especially the last few weeks, like endurance is also like I'm very much like a sprint type
Hmm.
athlete. So I've been working a lot on my endurance over the last month or so. Now with the snow, going a lot, cross country skiing a lot,
Yeah.
swimming, biking, running a little bit. I'm not a huge runner. Definitely something I need to work. I'm trying. Like the
Yeah.
other day, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do 10K because I need to get some running mileage in before the snow
Mm,
hits. But yeah, definitely trying to work on some of those things and then seeing where it takes me, like seeing how I'm going to put it together. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to put that all together into another, kind of like run for competing at
yeah.
sanctionals and CrossFit, or if I want to do, like, I've been thinking about doing some like types of challenges. So just I want to stay like really strong because that's important to me. But
What types of challenges?
I've been thinking I want to like do something to raise money and awareness for mental health. I've been thinking about maybe like 100-kilometer cross country ski or something. The only thing is like there is this Canadian ski marathon around here that's like 2 days where you do 80 kilometers each day. And so for me, I'm like, is 100 kilometers impressive enough? But then at the same time, the other day I did less than 10 kilometers in 1 hour. Like it's like probably going to take like 12 hours at least. So
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe it is a good
Maybe it
first
is.
challenge to do. Yeah. So I might do something like that. I'm trying to see how like I could even possibly organize that, especially with all the things going on this
Right.
year. Like,
Absolutely.
but it's definitely something I can just go do, like find a 20-kilometer loop and do it, all day, and like have a friend with a car at one end and like give me some snacks and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's definitely a way to do it with everything going on for sure. But yeah, I've been thinking about doing some stuff like that because I know I need to work on my endurance anyways, and this is the first time I feel in no rush. Like
Yeah.
before, I was like, oh my God, I need to like recover this injury and get back to CrossFit. But it always left me, again, my shoulders are hurting, again, this.
Yeah.
And so now I can really just take the time and be like, hey, I want to try this. I want to get back into I want to get to do some backcountry snowboarding, which I still need to be definitely in shape if I'm going to like climb up the mountain with skis
Right.
to do that. Like, so right now I'm really just enjoying like trying to see where my training takes me and programming for myself and like seeing what I'm working on, especially those endurance weaknesses and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, we'll see if I'll get back to CrossFit or if I'll just, who knows? I don't know. I've been really
Yeah.
inspired about listening to podcasts about these people who do like crazy challenges.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I was like, oh, like I want to do something like that. So who knows?
For sure. Is there any or my other question, what are you doing out since your focus is not just CrossFit? Like what do your days look like, or what are your goals in kind of other areas since we're not just at the gym?
Yeah, so like I work a ton on my business. That's one thing. That's pretty much what I spend most of my days on.
Yeah.
I do like a lot of like marketing and consulting work with athletes, organizations,
Mm.
businesses around social media marketing. So that's like basically my day to day. Like that pays that pays the bills.
Yeah.
And then other things that I like to do, like I'm trying to learn about a ton of different things right now. Spend that time. I think that's like been a big thing since the pandemic happened. Is
Yeah.
like if I have that extra time, like before, I think last year I really burnt out on work and then managing work with competition.
Right.
Last year was a big realization for me that's like you
Hmm.
can't try to say you want to go to the CrossFit Games and grow a business, and
Right.
like it's very difficult. Do you have to go all in on one of these things? And so that's
Mm.
when this injury happened with my motorbike crash, and I was like, okay, let me just take a year and focus on business. And
Okay.
so then this summer, once the pandemic hit, I've been like, okay, let's not fill this free time with more work.
Yeah.
Let's like figure out these other things. And so that's led to like me getting back into my podcast that I've really, really enjoyed doing.
Hmm.
I've been doing a lot of like different speaking engagements and speaking engagement, creating more content, running workshops and things like
Hmm.
that, and realizing, okay, like this is cool. I like actually doing some of these things more than more like
Yeah.
having a team of employees trying to do stuff
Yeah,
I've been like just diving into these new opportunities that have just kind of organically happened since the pandemic started,
for sure.
and just like giving myself the time to explore those things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
As far as the podcast go, what's the name of the podcast, and then what's the premise on it?
Yeah, so my podcast is called All In with Natalie Allport, and I started in 2017. Actually, like Lucas, I think was like one of my first interviews. Lucas
Awesome.
Parker, who we talked about, I think before we
Yeah,
started the podcast, and because yeah, he's a good friend. He actually like that was like my only podcast that I actually recorded in person. He came over to my house, and we did that whole thing. But yeah, I basically was interviewing athletes and diving into their story and their mindset and their day-to-day life and like kind of like the habits that make them who they are. Like
yeah,
what do they do in a day and how does this affect them? And yeah, I kicked off with like, I don't know, maybe like 10 episodes. And then basically work happened, all these things
yeah,
happened, and I kind of took a step back. And then I came back to it when the pandemic hit. I saw that, especially like so many people were online, like the huge increase, right?
yeah,
Especially those first few weeks. And I saw that, some people were doing some live stuff, but there's also like a lot of negativity. Like my message from the start was like, hey, like our mindset's the only thing we can control. Like we can't control what's going on in the world right now. We can't control if our businesses are going to be shut down for this long or this long, but like we can control our mindset. And
for
so
sure.
I try to put that message out really early, and so then all of a sudden I started thinking like, how can I bring positive conversations to light, especially also with a lot of my athlete friends that are like stuck at home
Yeah,
and they have nothing to do either. And so I messaged some athletes and started doing these lives, and I started doing them weekly. And so it started actually like as a happy hour, which was kind of
yeah,
cool. Like the first few ones, like we were just like, casually drinking. Also, it takes me like 5 hours to drink a beer. I'm like the slowest drinker ever. So I wouldn't say it was like a real happy hour, but
right.
it was more of like a sip once every 10 minutes. And so we did that, and they started going like really well. I started getting connected with different people, and so I started using them for my podcast as well. And I was like, of course, this is like literally a podcast.
Yeah,
um and so that started going really well. Started doing these lives. All of a sudden I got like speaking agents who were trying to book speakers on my show. It was crazy. It was like, hey,
that's
my
super cool.
athlete that I represent watched your show and they want to be on, can we book it? And I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, like
Yeah.
come on my Instagram live show. And yeah, like it was really really cool. And it also just, I was kind of scared before, like to go live and do these things, and all of a sudden these opportunities presented themselves. Even like, being on other people's podcasts. I think after my snowboarding, I kind of turned down anything and kind of like
Right,
shuttered out like talking about some of the things I went through. And this year has really opened up to like becoming more of an advocate for mental health, talking more about my story and helping other athletes.
right.
And so more opportunities like that started coming, and started doing more of the live show and the podcast and everything.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so I've been spending a ton of time doing that. It's been awesome. Like just even like the premise was like, let's create good content and content that can help other people. But at
Yeah.
the same time, like it helped me because being stuck at home with this pandemic, I get to
Hmm.
connect with some like awesome people who I have things in common with, who maybe I
Yeah.
haven't met before or I haven't talked to in a while. And so it was something like I started looking really forward to every single week. And so yeah, now just continuing with that, continuing with the business, and also just like I think one thing the pandemic has reminded me, I've been so driven in like business and sport, but it's been like that life, like we're human beings, not human doings, is like one of my favorite quotes right now.
Wow, I like that.
And I don't know who said it. I know I saw Michael Gervais, mindset coach. He posted it,
Hmm.
but I've heard it before that, so I don't know if it was like originally from him.
Yeah,
But that's like something I really am trying to embody, because I
I
realize I
like that a
fit
lot.
every waking minute into work or something, because I'm like, I need to
Yeah.
grow the business to this, or I need to, get this level in my sport. But now I'm realizing like, let me just take the time to enjoy a walk with my dog. Like
Hmm.
I just bought a split board and I want to like try to get some adventures in on the mountains, if I don't know if travel is going to be possible, but if something's going to be
Yeah.
possible here. We're having a lot more lockdowns up here, but so just trying to explore those different things that I like to do. Like even I was like, I want to get back into like backcountry snowboarding and stuff, not to like try to go pro again or something, but
Just
literally.
flow. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's been a big breakthrough for me, because I usually am someone who like I need to do things with a specific purpose, and I'm realizing like life like is short, and that's not what we need to just focus on. Like we need to do the things that make us happy, make our soul happy, and not just like, for this end goal, because we're not going to be happy when we reach that end goal if we don't
Right.
love the process. So
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that should resonate with a lot of people, because most people, when they try to get things and fail, it's because they're just worried about that end goal, and then whatever has become too hard or too difficult, and that's not enjoyable. So that when a lot of people make goals, that's usually all they're worried about, and that's usually why they don't reach them, if that's just the head down type of thing.
Oh yeah. You see a lot of athletes who are like they get to the top level of their sport. You see the movie The Weight of Gold, for example, and they're not happy. Like they've achieved all this, but the things that they've sacrificed on the way, they say it's not worth it. They would sell their medals, to get these moments back, or to do things in a more holistic manner. And so that's something that I think, in my mind, I was like, I don't care. I'll sacrifice anything to get that gold medal or whatever it is.
Right.
Same thing. And now I'm really like realizing that, like, if you look back on your life, like, yeah, that's great. Like, I know I'm someone who always has to be driven to something. Like, like if you gave me a ton of money now and said, hey, you can just chill and do nothing, like that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't see that happening for some reason.
No, it's just not. But like, I need to have these things that I'm working towards for sure. But I'm realizing that I'm actually enjoying the moments of like taking things slow, and just like being present more. Before it was like a forced balance, as I was still doing it. Like, you're doing self-care just to make yourself more productive.
Right.
Now it's
I'm plugging it in, my self-care. I'm going to do it right here. I have to do it here.
Yeah. Now it's more like working to, like, you're not living to work, you're working to live, right? And like just building that in, because like realizing like everything with my job, I can do remote, I can travel, I can do these things. Why am I like just spending every waking minute on my laptop when I actually could just go outside and go cross country skiing in the middle of the day if I want to? Like I should be doing those things. And so that's been an eye-opener for me.
For sure. So if someone was looking to find you or connect with you, where would they find you on social media?
Yeah, just any platform. I'm at Natalie Allport, NATALIEALLPORT. And same thing, my website is natalieallport.com. So it's pretty straightforward.
Keep it simple. I like it.
Yeah.
And then the last two questions that everybody gets. What is your definition of health? Not necessarily like the dictionary definition, but what do you strive for?
Yeah, I think it's being capable to handle anything that life brings at you, mentally and physically. So I think like health is, you don't have to, like, there's a spectrum of health. Like as an athlete, like your immune system is compromised a lot because you're pushing so hard. So sometimes, like as an extreme athlete, I would say that's not necessarily, you're like a little bit too far on the health spectrum per se. But I would say when I define health, but sometimes those sacrifices are made, like I kind of touched on before. But I think like being able to handle anything in life, whether it's like, oh my God, my friend is stuck on the 20th floor of this building, I need to run up, like anything you want to handle. And I think you're not there unless you're mentally there as well. Like being able to mentally handle the things in life as well is super important.
Great. And then something from your life that you think someone listening to the podcast could kind of take away as a positive.
Yeah, I think a big thing is that your passions might change, or these things that you changed. I hear people say like, oh, my glory days was when I was a college football player, or this.
Yeah.
It's like, I want my life to be like I'm on my deathbed and I'm like, I have continued growth till then. Like that's the best day, not this memory back in the day. I want everything to be a platform of growth. And so I know a lot of people can relate, especially with this year, maybe losing their jobs or switching careers or things like that. Just look at everything you've done as like, it's made you into the person you are. And even if you're not happy with what that is now, it's caused you to grow into what you're going to become. So everything is a stepping stone and a building block. Don't look at this like any time as like, oh my God, I missed that time. It was, miss it, but as like the glory days, right? Like you peaked, like try to peak on your deathbed.
Yes. Oh, I like that a lot. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. That was wonderful.
Yeah, I can go on to stories for a while.
Absolutely. That'll be part 2. That was great. How is your podcast going? It seems that if you're getting speaking engagement, that's working out pretty well.
Yeah, I know. It was so crazy, like that people were like, oh yeah, we want to book this person on your live. I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah. And then, I've gotten a lot of that. And then recently a lot of people who, that just like have asked to come on the podcast or book on, which has been cool. But it's going